computer. There we go. Okay, so I said we would start tonight with just a general check-in on the development of the season. And I made some notes. I want to tell you up front, from where I'm sitting, things are progressing really fast and really abruptly. Now, that can always change. We have rain coming tonight and tomorrow. Every time we get rain, it will cool down. You've heard me say this 100 times, I'm sure, but we do not have what you would think of as a warm summer rain. In Israel, if it rains, it is a cold rain. It's accompanied with cold water falling from heaven and a cold temperature in atmospheric temperature. Okay, ambient. It's not an ambient temperature. It's a cold temperature. Okay, when it rains. We were back up to the high 80s this week. We've had about almost a week without rain. We had a week of heavy rain, a week where we got, in some areas, more than 1 month of rain in 1 week. Okay, so let me say that again. In some areas, we got more than 1 month of rain for this time of year in 1 week. And then it shut off. And then the temperatures, and it was cold and rainy. And then the temperatures came back up and everything started popping and flying up out of the earth. I mean, like crazy. And now we've had a week of sometimes as high as low 80s. And then tonight we're going to go back into some rain tonight and tomorrow. We're supposed to. So it's going to get cold again. Cold and rainy will cause the plant to grow tall and keep gaining height and put its energy in the leaves or what the Bible calls the blade and the stalk of the plant. One of the reasons it was so curious for me to watch these high temperatures is because one of the signals that the barley has been given to it by his creator, Elohim, is that as soon as the water shuts off and the heat comes on, the barley makes a head of grain. So it was really interesting when we came back into this heat to watch the barley that just broke the surface of the earth on November 7th. And today it's the 13th. It's every bit of 3 inches tall, between 3 and 4 inches tall. Okay, so that's in like 8 days. It just flew up. From the time I saw it breaking the surface of the earth till today, it's literally grown 3 to 4 inches in height, just at a phenomenal rate. So from that perspective of having the understanding that how the barley reacts to cold and rain, dry and hot, it's really been interesting to see that barley explode and push up out of the earth the way it has. November the 7th, the same day, and I've never seen this before, and it doesn't mean it'll happen this way again. We can't use this as a criteria, okay? So don't take it like that. November the 7th, we had the cranes begin to arrive. 35,000 cranes, the migratory cranes that come through out of Africa and nest here and raise their young before they continue their migration on to Europe. So we've had a lot going on. I had a report and I haven't been able to verify it, but it was from a friend of mine that I was visiting with on Thursday. He said that he and his girlfriend had seen the Egyptian pelicans. The pelicans arrived just shortly before the Egyptian storks, and everybody gets excited over the black and white Egyptian storks. So things are just You know, we're just right here on the cusp. And if things doesn't slow down compared to what the rate they've been progressing at, things are happening in a hurry. So let me show you today. I just want to show you some things here. Whoops. Okay, screen share. I'm going to have to try to get it open. Send my photos. I went around, took some photos in the village today. Okay. Are you seeing photos?
Yes.
Let me try. You were? Okay, let me try. Let me go back. I didn't think you were. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I spotted the fig. My fig tree now has 4 figs on it, so.
Okay, so this is what we look like today. We look like we have lawns with grass, natural grass. This absolutely does not exist in Israel. Every bit of that is wild wheat and barley. And that is from the 8th of November when we were seeing just bare dirt. Okay. I'm just going to show you some natural areas that are not, they're mowed once a year with a tractor, and whatever happens in between happens. This is another area. You can see that it's just beginning to look like grass. This is another area. Okay, this picture is out across the Yavniel Valley. When I look for the new moon, I'm usually looking for it above this ridge right here, Ramat Yavniel. The domestic wheat, this is domestic wheat. The domestic wheat is up. Okay, one of the things I'm seeing, and this has happened before, is that I do not believe that the figs are going to lose all of their leaves. Normally what we look for is we look for the fig, right here's a fig right here. We look for the fig to bud, this would be a fig bud, and then the leaf to come on. But as you can see, all of our fig trees are still budding figs this year, and they've still retained a few leaves. Can this change? Yes, this can change. Do we have time for all these leaves to drop? I don't know. We'll see. I have seen years when this doesn't happen. And I tell you, I think the same thing will be true of the almond tree. Some years the almond tree will bloom before the leaves bud out. This year, every one of the leaves are still on the almond tree. Here's another one. See, some of the leaves are dropping, but we're still putting on figs on this olive tree. Okay, we'll go over here. Okay, so this is what the land looks like from a distance. All of this brown is last year's vegetation. Because we have not had the cold, wet rains and any amount for any length of time, for any length of time that's accompanied by the blowing winds, everything is still standing from last year. And you would think, oh, well, you know, there's not a lot going on, but you have to know where to look. If we pull this up, you can see below the leaves, below the last year's weeds, that there's plenty of vegetation. It's just concealed because we have not had extended rains with blowing winds to knock the old vegetation down. The earth has not been stripped. Okay, and then there was one more. Okay, the other thing we lacked this year, every year you've been with me, you hear me talk about how the mustard comes up first. The mustard's just now coming up. Let's see if I've got another photo here. Okay, this is just another unkept field here in the village. Nothing goes on, it just whatever happens, it happens. I want to show you up here if I can find the picture. Okay, this was, which I have no idea what it is, this was the first plant that came up this year. First plant. This is not mustard. Right here is the mustard. And it is just now breaking the surface of the earth. As well, I'm going to use the word winter. I don't want that to confuse you, please, because I'm using it according to the understanding of modern language. Citrus is considered in Israel a winter fruit. Almost always before, one of the things that I have done when we've gone on inspections with some of the other groups is to look in to see how the citrus is doing. Are the oranges, or have they been harvested yet? That was always one of the signals to me that we were coming to the end of the cold and rainy season, and that the Abib, or the season of life, was approaching. This year already, the oranges are being harvested, and these kumquats have been harvested. My pomelos, they are ready to harvest. I've been feeding them to my husband. What else is out there? Clementines, they're always after the pomelos. The loquats are ready. So we're getting a lot of citrus action even now, right now in Israel. Let me see what this says. All your fig leaves have dropped. Debbie, a lot of years ours do too, but I don't know if that's going to happen this year. They're still on the ends of the branches. Yeah, so normally they will drop in a normal wet and cold season. This is, so Julie, this is, yeah, you haven't heard of it because probably the other people who watch the barley do not talk about it. See, I mean, okay, so most of the people who watch the barley watch it from afar. And so they're looking for easy things that they can follow from overseas, from Canada, from the United States, from England, from wherever. And some of those easier signs will be to know when the migratory birds come in from Africa into Israel, because it's really a big deal here. I mean, we have people that fly in all over the world when the migratory birds start landing in Israel, and they take photos. They're bird watchers. So, you know, for those people who live overseas, some of these signs are easier to follow. But since I live here, I look for things like the mustard to come up. I look for things like I can tell you that what they call the laughing dove, the guys are already fighting, and they're territorial when they're in mating season. I can already hear the males out there battling. You can hear their wings fluttering, and as they smack into each other, and they fly and they smack into each other, it's a little fight territory they do for the females. That's already going on. I can tell you that the raptors, all of the falcon type birds that we have that hunt the mice when they get busy in the fields, and the mice get busy in the fields when they're fattening up to have babies or have had babies. All of the raptors are gathering in groups and fluttering in place and hunting. So I'm seeing things that I know from a local perspective on the ground here. I'm seeing a lot of things that's telling me that we're well into this season of love and life, because what's it about? Reproduction. If there's plenty of mice on the ground, it's because they're getting ready to reproduce. If the males are fighting males, it's because they're getting ready to reproduce. If the pelicans and the cranes are coming in, they reproduce in Israel. So you won't hear, and the citrus trees is just part of what I have noticed of the patterns and rhythm of the land over the years. So you may not hear these things from other people, which is fine, but I have more of a, I don't know, a more on the ground view than most of the people. Isn't some of them a mixture of fruit? Like, I don't know if we have tangelos or tangerines here. We have oranges, we have the pomelos, which are ready. We have the grapefruits, we have the clementine, we have the kumquat, the loquat. We may have a tangerine. That's all the ones that I know that we have. But all of these things are going on now. Now I want to show you another photo here. I'm going to be the first one to admit to you that this is super early. Super early. See if I can find it here. But well, where'd you go? Right here. The lupines, the Texas bluebonnets are up, coming up just now. And the cyclamines are coming up. Okay, we're approaching that time of year quickly, unless something slows down, when the flower bursts forth in everything blooming. Everything blooming. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Today, everything feels like it's in a frenzied hurry. I mean, we've got to have rain. I hope we've got to have rain. I hope we've got to have more rain than this. Getting a month's worth of rain in 1 week, I don't think is going to get us where we need to be. But so I think we've got to have more rain. And when the rain comes, it should slow this stuff down. But the fact that we're getting the show of this stuff tells us how quickly things are changing. I mean, go back to the fact that the 7th, I was just seeing those, whatever those little plants are, and I'll be figuring out what they were as they get bigger. I don't know what they are now. I was just seeing those little plants break the earth. And then the 8th, the next day, the wheat and the barley broke the earth. And now the 13th, we're looking at lupines or Texas bluebonnets and cyclamen. So everything feels in this moment like it's in a frenzy to reproduce. Speeding up the time. Yeah, he could be, but we need more than 1 year to prove that. It could be. I'd have to look at that verse in context to be able to say that. But there's speeding up the time or shortening the time. I think that the verse is about shortening the days. So that's basically a look at, yeah, that's it. Thank you, Julie. That's basically a look at the development of the land. It's pretty exciting. I did go back and look over there at the barley I had on the fence. One was a worm barley, which means that you can squish the guts out of it and it's all slimy. And one of those bunches was worm, and I threw it over in the field across the road. And I am noticing they're delayed, but they are indeed, some of them are starting to germinate and come up and make barley over there. I dug a few up and looked at them. But again, that was only for the purpose just to see what would germinate. That's not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to round out my knowledge on these wild grains, on what will reproduce and what won't reproduce. I don't think in any stretch of the imagination that there's enough starch in the worm barley or the very, very soft dough barley that would be enough to legitimize a harvest and to try to make flour for the bikurim, for the meat offering for the barley. So I'm trying to think, do I want to end that recording and divide it? No, I don't. I'm just going to keep it, let it go. So now I'm going to take you into some of the things that we talked about last week. But before I do, I'm going to show you some more pictures. And before I show you the pictures, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit. So among all these other things that we've already talked about my health and needing to be connected to the land, as the same time that we were allowed to move to this location, Elohim started talking to me about this season that we're in. And he literally told me at that time it was called the season of love and life. And before that, I did not know about the scripture in Jeremiah about it being the season of love for Israel. I did not know about the scripture with Isaac about it being the time of life when he was born. I just heard this in my spirit, and I knew it was about what happens on this earth. And I also knew that the only way to learn these things was to live these things. Oh, Becca, did you keep track of seeing early growth last year? I'll have to go back and look. Yes, I think we saw it in December last year. It's in the In Search of His Ancient Path Facebook group. But I believe I posted a picture from December of last year. I believe. But let me just say this about the timing of when it appears. I was taught that barley's a 90-day crop. And it's not always, not the wild barley. I've seen it delayed as much as 4.5 months before it's even what we think of as a beeb. Yeah, I think, Nancy, that there's a picture back there in the group from December. I know where I saw it, and it's not one of the lots I photographed today, but I know where I saw it in the village, but I'm pretty sure it was December. So as I began this journey, I knew that the only way to truly understand some of the things we were being given is to live it. And he had already spoken to me about this, the root of love and life. Torah is the root of love and life. And that's what he was speaking to me about at that point. And so when we got to this land, I knew I had to plant it. I mean, this is something that I have been talking to my husband about for a year already before we had this place. We need to have a place where we plant. We just, and I just had this in me at that time. I didn't know what that planting was and what that need to plant was. So I'm going to show you these pictures here. And all this is just my garden now. The only reason I'm showing you these, whoops, I shut that. Let me get the photos back up. The only reason I'm showing you these is because I want you to just basically see, shut this and try again, basically see that most of my lessons I learn is because I grow things and I touch things on this earth. I literally grow things. This is the garden today. There was nothing on this property when I got it 3 years ago. This olive tree right here was here. This big sage plant was here. None of the wood mulch was here. None of this lemon tree was somewhat alive. These trees back here were all dead stumps. These have all come back to life. That's my papaya tree. I'm really thrilled about how well he's doing. We're going to have so many papayas next year. It's crazy. But I literally grow things. This year, when the barley come up out of the earth, I said, okay, now's the time. I need to put my tender greens in the earth. So this year, I'm literally planting according to the barley and with the barley. There's lettuce in here. There's arugula. There's spinach. There's garden cress. There's, oh my goodness, I don't even know what all else there is. This one, whoops, sorry, stop sharing. Another one in there had Swiss chard. So I'm literally taking the bird net, the netting is to keep the birds out, the blackbirds. I'm literally taking to the scriptures to the earth. Now, why am I telling you this? Because we're going to get into some of the things tonight that the scripture says that I've now taken back to the earth to find out what it was talking about. Because I have been through a couple of the cycles already, and I can go back to what I've done, and I can look at this specific timing, and I can say, okay, so what does this word really truly mean in context in this verse? So with that said, the first thing I do before we get back into what I just talked to you about is I want to go back and correct a mistake I made last week. I love it when God corrects me. That means he loves me and he doesn't want me to believe my error. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to go back and correct the mistake I made last week. And it was in Leviticus 23, 9 through 22. My mistake I made was thinking that we had to roast the wheat. So of those of you who were here last week, can you please tell me if that's sank in for you, if you can remember, can you please tell me why we would not need to roast the wheat? Any takers? Let's go back to Leviticus. Get it open. I just want to make this clear because that was me jumping the gun on that. And he literally spoke to me out of the blue and said, you know, you don't have to roast the barley, you don't have to roast the wheat, right? And I was like, and then at the same time he told me that, he told me why. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. I wasn't even thinking about that when he spoke to me. Leviticus 2:14, if thou offer a meat offering of thy first fruits unto the Lord, thou shalt offer for the meat offering of thy first fruits green ears dried by fire. We're going to leave this other out right here for now. Green ears dried by fire. We're offering a meat offering. We're offering something that has been ground. Okay, so why doesn't that apply to the wheat? Because what are we offering for the wheat? We're offering bread. We're offering 2 loaves of leavened bread. We're not offering a meat offering, okay? 2 loaves, 2 wave loaves, 2 tin still. They shall be of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven. They are first fruits. Okay, so the 11 loaves were first fruits. You don't have to parch the wheat to make a leavened loaf. We're not offering a ground grain offering. The parching was for the ground grain offering. Now we're going to get into a beautiful pattern on this tonight. if he hadn't have corrected me on this thinking, he could have never shown me the pattern. He showed me, we'll get into later. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that the only thing that had to be roasted was a meat offering. A meat offering. Okay? And a meat offering is a ground grain. It called the 2 leavened loaves of bread the first fruits offering for Shavuot. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Okay. So what's really interesting that we'll get into later on when we talk about what an acceptable field looks like from a biblical perspective, because we have modern man's version of what we've been told a field should look like when we inspect barley. So we're also going to cover after tonight, we'll go into the rain and what, if the Bible says when it should rain and when it shouldn't rain. Then after we cover the rain, then we're going to just look at and see what the Bible says a field looks like, okay? All of this is very important because everything that we learned coming into this, we learned from people who don't take the Bible and go to the land. I'm not trying to be ugly at all when I say this. That's not the purpose in my heart. But when you take the Bible and go to the land, it looks different than when you read the scripture and you decide what you're looking for, and then you come to the land and find it. Okay? So we're going to get into the field aspect of it, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chorazim anyway. And this just baffled me in the beginning because I didn't understand the part about the free will offering. The Bible talks about the wheat being a free will offering. Chorazim, right up the road here, which is about a 4-hour walk from Capernaum. So it's right there on the Sea of Galilee. Chorazim, here in the Galilee, grew what was known to grow the best barley and wheat in all of Israel. Okay, and so people would go there and they would purchase it because it was the finest in all of Israel. They would purchase it and offer it in the temple. What's really interesting about that is that this is a very rocky area. And yet this wheat was acceptable in the temple. Not only was it acceptable as a free will offering, but it was considered the finest. Okay, just going to leave that right there. Now, we're going to go to Exodus 9. Get this up, Exodus 9. And we're going to look at the whole 7th plague, because we have isolated too many scriptures on this plague. We have a tendency just to cherry pick a few verses here and there. And we're going to start in verse 19. Okay. See if I can move this down a little bit. Move that down a little bit. Okay, verse 19. Let's start in 18. Behold, tomorrow about this time, I will cause it to rain. And that word, we're getting into some of the rain words here, which is good because that's where we're moving on to next. Matar. Matar means to fall from the heaven, Anything that rains down on your head. If you're standing underneath a date tree and the wind blows and a bunch of them drop on your head, you could say it's raining dates because it's falling from the heaven. I will cause it to rain a me'od, grievous, heavy, kabod, that comes from the word glory or the word liver. So liver's the heaviest organ in your body, the weightiest organ, a grievous hail, such as not been seen in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even unto now. Send therefore now and gather thy cattle and all thy hast in the field. For upon every man and beast which shall be found in the field shall not be brought home, the hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. Now look at verse 20. It says, and he that feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and cattle flee into the houses. And he that regarded not the word of the Lord left his servants and his cattle in the field. Okay, so we had some that feared and we had some that feared not, even among the servants of Pharaoh. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thy hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all of the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. That's very interesting that he includes the herbs here. And that word is esev. It means, esev means to glisten. It's like when I look at the barley and wheat and the oats, when they're in the grass stage and the dew is still coming down in the morning, they glisten because the dew rests on the top of them. And as the sun comes up, they look silver and glistening because of the moisture. And Moses stretched out his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran along upon the ground. Fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Israel. This is a really bad translation here in English. It says, and so there was hail and fire mingled with hail. What this really says is that there was fire inside, in the middle of the hail. Very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, and all that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail smote every herb of the field, and brake every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. And Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron and said unto them, I have sinned. This time the Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, for it is enough, that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. Actually, what it says is that, let me see if I can find it. Yes, Elohim's voice. He says that there'll be no more of Elohim's voice and hail, and I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread my hands unto the Lord, and the thunder will cease. Neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know how that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that you shall not fear the Lord thy God. The flax and the barley. Now here's just like a little blurb. It's almost like a blurb out of place at the end of the story. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bold. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they will not grown up. Now, we will be told that this means that they were dark, and the word is a field. And in Strong's, let me see if I can get Strong's up there, it says unripe weakness, okay? But we're going to be told by others that this word means dark, and there's a reason for that. And Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread his hands unto the Lord, and the thunder and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders had ceased, he sinned yet more and hardened his heart, he and his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, neither would he let the children go, as the Lord had spoken by Moses. Okay. No, ash is the word for fire in that passage. Okay, so the first thing you want to tell you about this is that when we read this passage, we were also told that he was going to strike the herbs of the field. So we knew that ahead of time. But when we look at the word strike, let me go back there so I can show you. They use the word, King James used the word smitten, which is fine. Whoops, 931. Smitten. The word is naka, to strike. Okay, so here is what everybody tells you in this passage, that the hail destroyed the barley. Okay, I believed that in the beginning too. I believed that the hail striking that barley plant and those flax plants, I believed that it destroyed them. Okay, we're going to go. Let's see if I can get this up here. First of all, I want to tell you here in the etymological dictionary that that's not what it says. In the etymological dictionary, it says disable. It doesn't say kill. Strike blows. Okay. And in the lexicon, it means struck, mostly in the sense of hurting. Okay, now I'm not going to go into all the verses and read them to you. I'll encourage you to do a word study on this. You will see that there are times that people were naka, they were struck, and later they died from being struck. Okay, but we live in a day and time when we can be struck and die in the same moment, whether it's to be shot fatally, whether it's to have something huge fall on us and crush us and we die in the moment, okay? But that is not what the word naka means. Naka means that you were injured from the striking. Beyond a shadow of doubt, the barley was knocked to the earth by the hail. But then what are we told happened? We were told that fire was running on the earth, right? So what is it we do with the barley first fruits after we harvest it? Do we not roast it by fire? We roast it by fire. Is it a coincidence that Deuteronomy says, let me make sure we got this right. I think it's Deuteronomy. Yeah. 16:12. Let me share that. Concerning the barley and the wheat, that thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. Okay. So is it a coincidence, or are we seeing a pattern that God established the roasting of the barley in Egypt, and that we're remembering when we were bondsmen in Egypt, and that we're remembering when that hail fell and knocked the barley to the earth, and then the fire, just like we watched last week with the wheat, when they were roasting that wheat, those kernels in that flame, and then that fire passed over those grains. Those grains were smitten and roasted in the same minute in that hail in Egypt. So the livestock did not die, but, well, no, I think that the ones left in the field, the livestock did die, and the people as well. I do think that they did, because didn't it, let me go back to the verse, hang on. Let's go back there, let me open up, share. Here we go. Okay. Whoops. So rise up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh, send the plagues, stretch forth my hands. Okay, tomorrow, cause it to rain. They shall die, 1919. Okay, Nancy, 1919 at the very end says, and they shall die. So yes, they did die. But the point about what we're talking about with the barley and the flax is, number one, that they were struck and injured. They were struck to the earth, but that's not what killed the plant. The fire killed the plant. How can I be sure of this? Because I have seen in almost 5 years, I think now, of watching the barley, that when the season is extended with rain, the barley will grow really tall. It puts all its energy in the height of the plant. And then when the winds come, that barley will fall over by the winds because it gets so tall. It's literally pushed to the earth. Literally, I can show you from last year. But it's not going to die just because it fell to the earth. It's going to go ahead and lay there and make a grain of wheat. So knocking stalks of barley down, unless you're ripping up out of the root, out of the earth off their root, or ripping their roots out of the earth, I should say, that barley's not just dead. It's going to go ahead and make something. Let me see if I can pull this up. We have a picture of that actually from last year. Photos. One second. Here we go. Let me share this. Right here is a perfect example of when barley gets too tall and it's knocked over. Okay, this happened. This actually is not my picture, and everybody, the person that shared it, said it was the area that I had inspected and declared the barley, and it wasn't. But doesn't matter. That's not the subject we're talking about. The subject we're talking about is that this area of barley had been knocked down, actually in some of these cases, by sheep wallowing in it, and by the heavy rains. This barley's not dead. If you look at it, it's still green and vital. It's still connected to its root. This barley, unless the animals ate it, went ahead and dropped grain. There will be barley there next year because this barley will have seeded itself. So what I'm saying is specifically is that the striking of the barley, since we understand what a beeb is, did not cause the scattering of the grain heads. If, according to the understanding of the other group, we're waiting until the barley is indivisible with your fingernail, that barley would shatter. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, that barley would shatter. But if we're taking what I understand to be the Abib condition, that barley is not going to shatter because it's got to withstand the cut of the sickle, and the grains have to stay on its head so that you can do what you need to do with it. Okay. Now, I promised you we were going to get into this idea of green ear. Let's go back to the verse. Okay. So I had previously written something about green ear that was led because of what I had been taught about the barley. Okay. Now I want to show you what I know about the barley from the land and show it to you in the understanding of the King James. So it says in 931 that the barley was in ear, okay? And that's the Hebrew word abib. Okay, here it says tender green, a young ear of grain. Okay, that's what it says. But we still don't understand what an ear is. Remember that this is Anglo-Saxon English, basically King James English. So we're going to go to Webster, and he is actually going to tell us what an ear is. Okay, the first thing it's going to do is give us a beeb. It already thinks it knows what we're looking for, but it doesn't. We're going to go right here to this word ear. Okay. I'm going to pull this over this way maybe if I can so you can see all the words. Okay. Of course, an organ of hearing. Okay, that's not a big surprise. That's number one. The sense of hearing. Okay, she has an ear for music or a good ear. In plural, the head or person. 4, the highest or the top or the highest part. 5, favorable hearing, attention, heed, regard. Give no ear to flattery. And then it uses Psalm 77, I cried unto the Lord and he gave ear unto me. Okay, a disposition to like or dislike. Now here's the one we're looking at, number 7. Anything, any part of a thing resembling an ear, a projecting part from the side of anything as the ears of a vessel used as handles. Okay, look at 8. The spike of corn. Now you have to understand that corn is a European word that means any grain. The spike of corn. What do we know the spike of corn? What do we know the spike as? We know it as the awns or the whiskers that stick out when it's in what we call head. Okay, so the spike of corn, that part of certain plants which contains the flowers and seeds, such as a ear of wheat or maize. Ear, to shoot as an ear, to form ears as corn. Now, I want to show you a picture. Let's see. Stop sharing. Screen share. Go here. Share this. These hairs are ears. This is that picture of the mashed down barley down there in Raim. But these hairs that protrude off the side is what they're calling, this has to be green. This is what the King James is telling us. These whiskers have to be green. Okay, I hear all kinds of comments rattling around in your brain. Go. Who wants to be first? No? No questions? No comments so far? Did everybody understand that? Did you see what Webster's 18, I think it's 1811 dictionary said about an ear, what an ear is? Everybody understood the ear is the protruding off the head of the maize or whatever it was he was referring to. I've already forgotten now.
I understood that, and the picture was very helpful. I'm just curious. So are you saying that that's when it's a beeve, is when it's green like that?
I'm saying that that is what the King James is telling us. If we're looking at the King James and we're saying, what is a green ear? That's what the King James is telling us. Okay, why is that important? Because let me show you what I came in believing the Abib was. This is what they consider to be Abib right here. What are the colors of the ears of that barley? Now there's some greenish in there, but it's mostly tan, right?
We can't see a picture.
We don't see a
Oh,
picture.
you can't see a picture? I'm so sorry. Let me help you there. I didn't know it would change on me. Let me grab it. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so what color are these ears?
They kind of have some green in them.
They have some green in them, but they're more brown than green, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah. And this barley in this field was the field that was used to declare the barley Abib, meaning indivisible, by your thumbnail. When you opened this head of barley, you could not divide the grain with your thumbnail. But when we look at what, and if we lose the picture, let me know. If we look at what we're told by Webster in his dictionary, then we know that that's a green ear because the ears are green. You didn't lose that picture, did you?
No.
Oh, we have it.
Okay, okay.
So the others and that stage would have shattered, but these wouldn't.
The other in that stage would have shattered, but these would not. Now, I'm not saying that this is ready to make a first fruits offering at all. Okay, let me make that very plainly. I am not saying that just because it has spikes that are green, that it's ready to make a first fruit offering. Okay, because those ears, I'm going to use a King James word, those ears just mean that it's in the process of making a grain. It doesn't mean that the holders have anything but liquid inside of them, because barley develops from water to worm to dough to indivisible. Okay, it's a process. But as soon as it puts on ears, it starts working on the grain. Okay, but what the King James specifically is saying in that verse, the King James, is that an Abib barley product will have green ears and not brown ears. That's right. If it's green, it can't be what they call carmel. I don't know if we're going to get into that word tonight or not. I don't really want to overwhelm you guys because I've got quite a little bit to look at here. Okay, any questions to this point? Okay. So what's really interesting is that at the same time that the barley is Abib, soft dough, not soft dough, dough. At the same time, the flax is in bloom. The flax is really unique because when the pink flower head fades, it releases a like a dandelion puff. The seed has like a dandelion wings to blow it away on the air and to carry it someplace else. Then after the head of the flower is dropped, then further down on the stem, it gets these little nodes with another seed in it. Actually, I'm trying to think how many seeds are in the node. I think there's only one seed per node and it gets several little nodes on the stem. But when the barley is in bloom, inside the bloom is a seed that's getting ready to be blown away on the wind like a dandelion puff. So both of those would have been knocked down with the hail. Now it says something really interesting in verse 32. Let's go there. Now, these are, of course, totally my opinions. But what I am doing is I'm going with this Bible to the land and looking at these things. It says, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten. Does that mean that the herbs, the grass, wasn't smitten? Remember when we looked back up here, it said that in verse, where was it? Verse 20, that all of the field, the herbs and everything would be smitten. Is he saying that it wasn't smitten? No, what we're looking at specifically in verse 31 and 32 is the fruit, what the Bible calls the grush, the product that was coming from these plants. Of course they were struck. They were, it says, not grown up. And that's actually a pretty good description, but it doesn't paint a good enough picture. So of course they were struck, but there was no produce to be smitten. With the barley and with the flax, there was produce, there was fruit to be smitten. So we're going to look at this word. The wheat and the rye were smitten, but they were not grown up. And that word is a feel. A feel. Let me go over here and get this up. If we look at a feel, we're told right down here on the Strong's that it's unripe, not grown up. But we're also told that this word, because the other group will tell you that the wheat and the rye were dark. We also will look at the root word and we're going to see that it means set as the sun, dusky, very dark. I'm still smiling. when God revealed this to me. It's just blew me away. Okay. So we have to ask ourselves, this is that part where I said I've had 2 cycles. So we have to ask ourselves, when the barley is medium dough and it still has its green ears, and it does when it's medium dough, it's still green, still wearing its green ears. What's going on with the wheat? I'm going to show you. Get over here. Got to get rid of this. Give me a second. I'm going to get a picture. Whoops, get out of there. Get this down. Go over here. Okay. First of all, you need to know, I wrote this down. Passover was on March the 7th. Now, this is the 7th plague. We know that in the year they came out of Egypt, that they had Passover on the 10th plague, when the death angel passed over their firstborn children and took the firstborn children of Egypt. Okay, so 7 to 10, that's at least 3 days in front of Passover. Let's just not even worry about the days. Let's just call it 3 days in front of Passover. So on March the 7th, we had Passover. And I can tell you what happened at Passover. That wheat, I can't speak about the rye. I've never found the wild rye. Maybe that'll be a project that God will put me on this year. That wheat was pregnant. It was swollen down in what we call the boot or the stalk of the wheat. You could run your finger up the stalk and you could feel that developing grain of head of barley just almost coming out, those blades, those side blades of wheat. It was pregnant, okay? It was hidden in darkness. The wheat was hidden in darkness down inside of the plant itself. It was on March 20th, about 2 weeks later. Let me share this with you. Okay, can you see this picture? This is me showing you that the wheat is just emerging. And do you see this swelling where the wheat is a field? It's hidden in darkness. Okay, let me go over to another one. I think I can do it from here. Here's a better picture. We could say of this that the wheat is just beginning to ear, because what will be the ears on this wheat is just coming out of darkness. And there's another one. Okay. Why is this significant? What do we know about the Messiah? He was the sinless Son of Man. He was the unleavened barley cake on Passover. But he was also the wheat seed of the Word of God, wasn't he? But he was concealed to most people until after his resurrection. Okay? And what happened on the day of his crucifixion? Elohim made that darkness. Are you getting the picture of the Word of God inside the stalk? Okay, represented in the Messiah on the cross, darkness being concealed in his body, his barley body, and most of even his disciples aren't even really going to believe that he was the Son of God until after his resurrection. All of these things that we read about in the works of the first fruits offering, the works that were offered in the temple, what they did in the temple, should represent an aspect of the Messiah. It's the work he came to do. So a field means that the product, the produce of the wheat was hidden in darkness and concealed when the barley was acceptable to be offered. The Messiah, after his resurrection, walked with him for 40 days, expounding all things, was on the road to Emmaus. He opened the scriptures. He told them all things. And then they realized it was him. And they said, didn't our hearts burn within us? So for 40 days after the resurrection, now the revelation of the wheat, the earing of the wheat is taking place. I'm going to stop there. Anybody got any questions so far?
This is just really amazing. I mean, I see the correlation. It's awesome. And he's revealed this to you. So it's just, it went in a place I didn't expect it to go. Just keeps going back to you, to our Messiah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it does. And everything should point to him because that's the only way to the Father.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way to be restored. Oh. Okay. Let me see where we're at here. Okay, so again, barley is a meat offering and it's parched by fire. We know at the Exodus that the fire from the hill walked the earth when the barley was struck to the earth, so it was parched by fire. At the time that the barley was ready to be offered, the wheat was hidden inside the boot or the body of the Messiah. He was not plainly revealed to everyone. The swelling of the seed head was in the boot or the body, but it could not be seen. And darkness, just as Messiah hung on the cross and darkness covered the earth, that seed of who he was hidden at that time. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do this next little piece here. Hadn't really planned on it. I had planned on it. I just don't want to overwhelm you guys. Have I given you? Are you okay, or do I need to kind of back off and let everybody chew on this for the week?
No, I think we can keep going.
Okay. That's the voice of one. What about the voice of others?
I agree. I mean, when I'm doing the math, doing the 3 plus, which I put it on the comments, 3 plus 7 plus the 40 and coming up with the 50, the whole weeks that are from that time to that time is just, it's so amazing. I'm like, what else do you got for us? I mean, show us.
Okay.
This is pretty awesome.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to go back to Exodus. Okay. We're not. We're going to go to Leviticus 2:14. We're going to tackle this really, really hard thing that everybody likes to laugh about, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. And it's Leviticus 2:14. We're going to look at this word here. It says that, talked about the green ears dried by fire. It says even corn beaten. And this word is that word gress, which it means the produce of. Okay, so gress is a really interesting word. We have a word similar to that in today's Hebrew. Let me see if I can pull it up down here on the bottom for you. It says the husk, the kernel, or the grain, but that's not what it says in the etymological dictionary. Let me go over there. It means the produce or the severed. So it's basically like the fruit of whatever, but it means it's been severed from. Now, why is that an interesting word? Gress means what's been severed, the produce of a plant or a tree or whatever. When we look at the word for divorce that we use in modern Hebrew, if a person is divorced and he's a man, he's grus. If a woman is divorced, he's grusa. So they've been severed. So it's a similar meaning. So it's important that you know that this word beaten out means that it has been severed from, and it's the word, again, carmel. Now this word carmel, they're going to tell you in the other groups, it means a very mature, hard, fully developed, like you know what an old maid kernel is when you get in your popcorn, those crunchy kernels that are a little burnt that I love to chew. My favorite part of the popcorn, if I ever have popcorn. You have the popcorn, I'll have the old maids. I love those. It's like that. Okay. We can see that it comes from the root is karim, which means a garden or a vineyard. Okay. But what's interesting about this word here in this verse in Leviticus 2:14, they're going to tell you that this is a completely hard, crunchy, hundreds, I forget what the scales on the Zadok is, but I mean completely dropped to the ground, completely ripe grade of corn. But if we take this word and we go to, hang on, Leviticus 23:14, this same word means, and you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears. And guess what that word is right there? Right there, caramel means green ears. Carmel means green ears. Okay, so can carmel mean a crunchy grain of barley, but a not crunchy grain of wheat? I don't think so. Here in Leviticus 23:14, speaking of the wheat, they're calling it carmel green ears. And Leviticus 2:14, speaking of the barley, they're calling it corn beaten out of full ears, a fully hard, 100% mature, drop to the earth grain of barley. It can't mean two things. It can only mean one thing. And everybody did not like my idea that since that is the root, comes from the parent word, or the root of all things that deal with grapes. That was one of the big things I took heat for last year, is I made the word mean a new thing that we've never seen before. I'm writing my own definitions. What I'm doing is I'm going back to the earth. I'm going back to the earth, and we're going to go back to the earth. Okay, the word Zadok scale is, that's right, it's called the Zadok scale, and there's a Feeks scale. These are both scales that is used in modern agriculture. Zadok scale has nothing to do with anything ancient. Okay, The man that taught me barley loved to use the Zadok scale because it had the word Zadok in it. So there's somebody named Zadok in our pretty modern history that came up with this scale, just like the guy Feeks who come up with the other scale. And it's just a modern chart that measures the development of the modern barley. That's what it's meant to be used for, not for the ancient barley. It doesn't exist in the Bible. I don't even know when it was published. Okay, I can't tell you. You might be able to do some research and find that out, but Zadok is just probably an unhappy coincidence because it gives it much more authority, I believe, in the ears of the hearers who understand some terminology than it should have. Okay. So I decided that I would go bypass everything Carmel that had to do with produce. And I would go look at the location where Elijah and Elisha operated out of, Mount Carmel, and see what I could find out. So let me go there. Whoops, so let's shrink this a little bit. Okay. Come back here. Do a share. Okay. Can you guys see that? Let me shrink this down just a little bit. Oh, that's way too much. Hang on. Now this is just good old Wikipedia. I'm going to go right here. Okay. And it's spelled exactly as the word that is used in Leviticus to describe the condition of the grains. Har HaCarmel. Okay. And it just says it's a coastal mountain range in northern Israel. It's just right up the road here. Everything in Israel is just right up the road. We're not very big. It's near the city of Haifa. In fact, part of Mount Carmel is in Haifa. Okay, here we go. The etymology. The etymology and the exact meaning of the name Carmel is disputed, but a large majority of concerned scholars see it as derived from the Semitic root. It would be KRM, which sets it close to the noun karim, meaning vineyard. Okay, and the addition of the L is quite common in Hebrew with the suffix. Okay. The common explanation is that the Hebrew word carmel means plantation, orchard, garden, growth, or alike. However, in the context of biblical Hebrew, the noun Carmel appears to denote the scrubby woodland typical of Carmel and the other areas in the Mediterranean climate in the Holy Land, an intermediate biome between the city and the semi-arid state from Midbar in Hebrew and Ya'er and forests like the ones in the mountains of Lebanon and high trunk trees, for instance, cedars. Okay, so what they're saying is in Israel, we have this midland area where if it's sandy, the Midbar, you go from the desert to like scrubland, lowland. And then from there you go to like forested areas, okay? The next paragraph says much circulation, century-old explanation that the name Carmel means the vineyard or garden of God is based on the presumed contraction, Karim, vineyard or garden, and El, a name of God. Okay, but it has no, basically that's saying no base in etymology. It's grammatically wrong and also has no support in the way the noun is used in the Hebrew Bible. And then it talks about Origen and Jerome and their interpretation of it, which was way off. So he is saying that it really doesn't have anything to do with grapes, that it's having to do with a scrubby land between the desert and the forest. So the next thing I decided to do is I said, okay, let me just go see what the Bible has to say about Mount Carmel. What do the verses in the Bible that mention Mount Carmel actually have to say about that region? So we're going to go to 1 Kings 18:30 through 32. Share this. And Elijah said unto the people, come near unto me. And all the people came unto him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. So there was an altar to the Lord there. Okay, now we know that if it's Elijah's day, a temple had already been built by Solomon. We know that the kingdoms are already divided, and that Jeroboam had already made the 2 golden calves, one in Bethel, one in Bethel and one in Dan up by Lebanon. But there was an altar in Mount Carmel that Elijah repaired. And verse 31, Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the son of Jacob, until whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and made a great trench around the altar, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. Okay, so we know that Carmel had an altar to Elohim there. Now it's really interesting that we're told King Saul in 1 Samuel 15:2. Wait a minute, that's not right. 12. Okay, Samuel had told Saul to meet him at a certain place, and that Samuel was going to make the sacrifice. Okay, that's the backstory. 1 Samuel 15:12. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a place or an altar. Okay, he stationed a, come on, show me, a place, and has gone about and passed on and gone down to Gilgal. So the priest is Samuel, the king is Saul, and Samuel may have been the one who set up the altar in Carmel that was broken down. We don't know that, but he did set up a place in Carmel. In 2 Chronicles 26:10, and this is Uzziah. We'll start in 29. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate and at the valley gate and at the turning of the wall, and fortified them. He also built towers in the desert and digged many wells, for he had much cattle, both in the low country and in the plains, husbandmen and also vine dressers in the mountains and in Carmel, for he loved husbandry. So we have vineyards in Carmel. And what is the root of Carmel? It's Karim. It's Karim. The word vine dressers here is Coram. Okay, the man who does it, who takes care of the vine, is a Coram. And he had vine dressers in Carmel. So they had, excuse me, they had grapes there. They had grapes there in Carmel. All right. Song of Solomon. 7:5. This is the bride. The head upon thee is like Carmel. The hair of thy head like purple argamon. The king is held in thy galleries. Okay, and it talks about, we talked about this before, how it says thy stature is like a palm tree, and it talks about thy breasts a cluster of grapes. And I explained that palm trees have clusters as well. But since I understand the King James, since Song of Solomon 7:5 says, thy head upon thee is like Carmel, okay, which would be the color crimson if we put a yod in the middle of this, okay? So he's alluding to here the cluster to be of grapes because her head is Carmel, and they were smart enough to know that this is a word that comes from the family of words that mean everything about the grapes. And it goes on and it says, there was another one in here I thought that talked about grapes. Yes. 7:8, and I will go up to the palm tree and I will take hold of the bough thereof. Now also thy breast shall be a cluster of the vine. Gafin, the vine, that's the word gafin, there's a grapevine. And the smell of thy nose like apples. Okay, so historically speaking, in that wiki article, I didn't get to show it to you, but you could find it on the internet. They have found that on Mount Carmel, there was a olive press, and there was vineyards. So there was also an altar to the Lord. Okay, remember that, those three. There was olive press, there were vineyards, and there was an altar to the Lord. Let's go to Genesis 35:14. Come on. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, God. Let's start in 35:13. And God went out from him in the place where he talked with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. What was the drink offering in the temple? It was wine. So you've got Jacob pouring on this stone a drink offering and oil on this stone. And Jacob called the name of the place where he spoke with him Bethel. What did we have on top of Mount Carmel? We had an altar to Elohim. We have archaeological evidence of vineyards, and we have archaeological evidence of olive presses. If they're offering on the altar before the temple from the time of Saul, they're probably offering like Jacob did. They're offering a drink offering and an oil offering. Probably, yes, in addition to some animal sacrifices. Okay, therefore, if I'm looking at this word, and I'm going to write it for you. Let me see if I can get my little pencil flipped out here real quick. Hang on. Whoops. Okay. If we're looking at the word for the condition of the wheat and the barley, or if we're looking at the word for carmel, they're both spelled exactly like this. Let me see if I can do it for you in block. How do I do that one? Let me think. How do you do the lamed? I think that's it. The lamed may be backwards. I skipped block. I went straight to handwriting. Now, if we're going to make this word say crimson, we're going to put a yud right there. That's the only difference between carmel and carmiel. Carmel means mount, ha-carmel, or it means the condition of the barley and the wheat. And adding the yud makes it the color. That is the only difference. Okay. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us in understanding that word? We have to understand that it came from the family of words from the grapes. So what does the barley and the wheat have in common that we could call it carmel? Let me see if I can show you real quick. Whoops. Let me get Google back up. There we go. It's just responding slow. Sorry, guys. Give me just a second. There was not one scripture that related to Mount Carmel that talked about the condition of the grains. Not one scripture. Okay, here we go. The only way that I would know that was wheat, the only way that I would know that that is barley, if I wasn't, how do I want to say this? The only way that I would know this was barley if I didn't know anything other than this picture was taken in Israel. The only way I would know is because it's in a green background. Because it's in a green background, I know this is barley. I don't know if I can make that bigger. No. Okay, because the even though these grains are dark, what color are the ears? The ears are green. Okay, the grain head is brown, but the ears are green. So that's interesting to note. But the way that I would know that this is barley, if I knew I was looking at a crop and I knew it was Israel, I would say, oh, that's barley because it's still the green season. Okay, let me share you again. I don't know if it'll stay with it or not. Let's see if it does. Did I lose you? Can you still see the screen? Can you still see the screen in the pictures, guys?
Yes.
Okay. What's the background look like on the wheat? On the wheat? Things are no longer green. This wheat's going to go red-brown, and I'm going to get better pictures of that this year, and it's going to look a lot like that barley I just showed you. The color is going to look a lot like that barley. This wheat's going to go red-brown before it goes black. And by the way, after it dies, it turns white. From what I can understand from the Word of God, by looking at the land, by saying, okay, carmel cannot be a fully mature grain of barley and a green ear of wheat. Fully mature is crunchy, green ear is not crunchy. Even the other teams will tell you it's not crunchy. It's got a little bit of moisture in there, you got to roast out of it. And then that's according to their standard and their understanding. It's not crunchy. You can dent it. You can leave your thumbprint in it when you try to divide it, but you can't divide it. So it's not crunchy if you can dent it. So carmel cannot mean green ear, and it cannot mean a crunchy, completely mature grain of barley and a green ear of wheat, a green grain of wheat at the same time. It's impossible. Impossible. But the one thing, when I go to the land and I look at what's out there, the one thing that they can have in common is that red-brown color, okay, carmel, almost like carmiel, is the red-brown color on their way to producing their end product. Okay. Sorry. I got a little forceful there at the end, but I get excited. Not because I need to be right. I want to be correct before my Father, and I don't want to teach anything that's not correct. But because we can go to the land and we can say, this verse doesn't make any sense. What can the barley and what can the wheat have in common? And how can we tie that back to a grape or a grape field or a field of or a vineyard? How to tie that back? The only way that they all mesh is by the color. That's the only way they can all mesh. Especially when one product is fully mature and one product is not yet mature. Okay, so that will be where we stop tonight. Is there any questions or comments?
I have one. I got kicked off the internet right when you said what barley and wheat have in common. Can you please repeat?
It's the color. It's the color. Did you see the photo I showed? Are you there, hon? No, not you, hon.
Yeah, it's very spotty. It's coming out.
Okay, so it's the color. I won't try to pull it up again, and since it's spotty, you might lose the connection. Do go back and look at the video. You'll want to see it's the color.
Yes, I
The
will.
barley and the wheat share the same red-brown color. Not all barley turns red-brown, but we definitely found an outstanding example of that. We being me and Elohim found or he led me to it. He knew it was there. An outstanding example of it last year.
And grapes also have that red color.
That's right. That's right. They do, because the Bible talks about the grapes as the color, as the blood color. Remember, we talked about that with the 9th of Av, the 5th day in the 9th month, and the harvesting of the grapes. Absolutely. Anybody else?
There. Thank you
It was
for
a very
mentioning.
awesome teaching today, Becca. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. You know, I love digging into this stuff. It's obviously more than just words in my life. So,
I think the word carmel has more to do with that mountain than it has to do with the condition of barley.
I do too.
I just looked up the alphabet and what it actually, the different letters mean, and it's so much more pointing to that mountain than it is to any condition of barley.
Exactly, exactly. But since we know that carmel ties back to grapes, then we have to say, how do these tie together? And, you know, I told my husband, and I didn't say this earlier, but when we know that if there's an altar and they're pouring out wine up there, don't you imagine that there was some coloration from that Mount Carmel?
Yeah.
Well, let me, not that this is all that important, I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on this, but when I look this up, and I just want to read this to you guys, we're looking, I'm just taking the letter sounds, it's, you know, like what she just wrote out, where we have the cat, and when I'm looking up all the meanings of that letter, I'm looking at wall, fence, inner room, to separate, to cut off. And then when I'm looking at the rash, I'm looking at head, a person, the highest, the top, the chief, the pinnacle, much importance. And then when we look at the M, the mim,
Are you
we're
talking about
looking,
the Paleo Hebrew, Nancy? Is that what you're
yeah,
doing?
yeah, then we're looking at water, blood, liquid, chaos, the deep. And then when we get to the Lamed finally, we have staff, cattle, teaching, learning, tongue, to control, to urge toward. And when I put all this together, I was like, I saw Mount Carmel. I said, all these things were happening on Mount Carmel because you described the altar, the wine press, I'm sorry, the olive press, and the grapevines. And I thought, I got goosebumps when I read through that because it was just so amazing.
Let me show you, and I don't even believe I dropped this, so thank you, but let me show you the real understanding to this whole drink offering being wine and the understanding of the Carmel. It's Isaiah 53:12 says that, therefore I will divide, oops, did I share that? Sorry, let me share it. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. So it has to be the barley and the wheat, both are pointing to the time when the Messiah laid down his life. He was numbered with the transgressors. He bare the sins of many and made intercession for transgressors. So the pouring out of that blood, Deuteronomy 32, I believe it is, talks about when the Israelites were with Moses in the wilderness. It says that I made you drink the pure blood of the grape. Okay, they were on the pure Torah back then. So to understand the color Kareem from the grapes, from the pouring out of the wine, we have to go back and put it all together, and it has to make a whole picture. Okay. we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. Here we go. It's going off.